Jeff and the other event staff don't have too much say when it comes to how entertaining the show is, or rather than the responsibility of running money. The Game Awards keep getting bigger, and the more people watch, the more big AAA companies are willing to pay to show off their games. Jeff ain't gonna turn down a hefty offer from no one, so there's less and less room for these smaller, more niche stuff. And whatever the big companies have to show, their games. Jeff ain't gonna turn down a hefty offer from no one, so there's less and less room for these smaller, more niche stuff. And whatever the big companies have to show, that's what we get. Some years are simply better than others. There aren't always going to be a lot of exciting announcements, and this year was a bit of a stinker. Now, I do think it's worth bringing all that up because it's a good conversation to have. The quality of the Game Awards has been dipping, and 2023 was a flat-out bad year, I would say. If Jeff wants the show to stay relevant as possible, he's got to strike a better balance. But the real discussion I want to have today isn't actually about the quality of the show. It's a much bigger issue that the show was merely a symptom. One reason it was so boring was that after a while, all the games started looking the same. You're watching for hours, and the themes, the visuals, the mechanics, everything starts running together. This has been a problem in recent years, at Summer Game Fest as well. Since E3 died, now we look to these two events to receive huge truckloads of game trailers, all from different companies, all at once. And every year, my brain struggles to keep paying attention because it's being assaulted by sameness, blandness. There are obviously still many different popular genres, many different very unique and wonderful games. It's not all literally the same thing. But if you zoom out, look at the big picture, identify the outer points on the chart that are farthest from each other, the amount of overlap within that chart is overwhelming. Fewer and fewer games within this high-budget AAA sphere are hitting the scene with any sort of unique identity or concepts. I'm not going to try and outline the exact genres and ideas that are being overused because this is a pretty nuanced and also very large topic, but I will at least say that every time I saw a trailer for a multiplayer shooter with guys in high-tech power suits shooting zappy guns, my brain shut down just a little bit more. My eyes glossed over a little more and threatened to wander away from the screen. It all runs together into this bluish slop. It's truly amazing that a company can spend $50 million on a game, put out this super flashy trailer to millions and millions of people, and 99% of the chat is going, "Who cares?" And it's because these games really don't have any real identity, which is because they are not projects created by people with something to say, with big ideas they want to make reality. These are cold, calculated products made exclusively because guys in suits at the top of skyscrapers told their studios to. Now, I could go on, but I won't, because this idea of trend-chasing, cash-grabbing games is nuts. The greed of AAA companies, the sameness of AAA games, this is a conversation we've been having for many years now. The fact that it happens is not the issue here. What I want to talk about is how it's currently happening in a way that kind of scares me. It kind of feels like we're reaching a new level, and watching the Game Awards this year, it was unsettling. We've all been discussing the idea of a gaming bubble and its eventual burst ever since AAA became a common household word. Every generation, budgets get bigger. It costs more and more and more and more to make games. If that were the only problem, though, we'd be okay. Higher graphical fidelity means more work to fill in the little details and get a AAA game looking really, really great. But advancements in tech means that many development processes are now streamlined. In many ways, it's easier than ever to make a game. And the industry has grown so big that there are now more people than ever buying games. The potential for profit is huge.
They call me Radco. I want to try? Say the word. Don't need no signing. As long as you're here from sunset and bring gold to the betting.
Hello! This place absolutely
Oh, finally here. Rules are simple. Choose who you're going against, make your wager, then ride to Blackbow and back. First the winner, second the losing crew. Got it? So, who are you going to race?
Rising
Stuttering
costs
Mamatco,
aren't the only
Iron Arse
problem.
Spaniard,
AAA
Black
companies
Boston.
are also competing to have the biggest, flashiest games. They're warring with each other to produce the most absurdly lavish game worlds we have ever seen. And in a way, this can be good for the consumer. Companies competing to make their games bigger and better. That's a conflict I can get behind. But of course, bigger and better games isn't the only end product in this scenario. Higher budgets means more aggressive monetization, more overworked developers. And now, an industry where yesteryear's masterpieces are this year's samey sludge. Games that would have made a huge splash in generations past are now essentially cheap schlock. And it's because everyone wants in on this pie. Gaming is huge. If you've got a popular multiplayer game, you have got a money machine. So countless companies are scrambling to put out the next big hit. Again, this is not necessarily new, but it's starting to feel like we're finally reaching a breaking point. The fear has always been that this is simply not sustainable. If this is one big race to the top, and everyone's solution is to just keep pumping more and more and more money into projects, and to chase trends harder and harder to
Come on, Roach!
eventually something has to give.
Lego, Roach, Lego! I believe in you, sir! I believe in you, sir!
Going to Perch. The AAA bubble has felt like more of a theoretical concept for a while now. We've been watching the bubble inflate for years, but we didn't know if or when it would actually pop. But after watching the Game Awards this year, it's finally starting to feel real. It finally feels like that bubble is stretching to its limit. AAA companies have been expanding so rapidly that they are finally reaching a point of unsustainability. They've been spending so much on these huge AAA multiplayer games, absolutely flooding the market with samey slurry, and it's not working. The live service model can be a big moneymaker, so every game wants to be the only game you play. As long as you're playing, you might be spending. But when dozens, if not hundreds, of these games hit the scene every single year, there are only so many players, and they've only got so much time to spend playing sci-fi looter shooters. Making the problem worse, the already successful games are hanging on longer than ever. The Game Awards have multiple categories that are dominated by the same handful of games every year. Everyone is still playing Dota and Apex Legends. Fortnite is now expanded into its own platform with multiple different games inside it, which is equal parts you're playing, you might be spending. But when dozens, if not hundreds, of these games hit the scene every single year, there are only so many players, and they've only got so much time to spend playing sci-fi looter shooters. Making the problem worse, the already successful games are hanging on longer than ever. The Game Awards have multiple categories that are dominated by the same handful of games every year. Everyone is still playing Dota and Apex Legends. Fortnite is now expanded into its own platform. Making the problem worse, the already successful games are hanging on longer than ever. The Game Awards have multiple categories that are dominated by the same handful of games every year. Everyone is still playing Dota and Apex Legends. Fortnite is now expanded into its own platform with multiple different games inside it, which is equal parts fascinating and terrifying. There just isn't that much room for multiplayer games, and yet all these other companies are so desperate to get in on the action that they are diluting the market with this similar Slurpee, and fewer games are actually getting enough traction to make any real money. And
Come on, caballito, Lego, Lego! Lego, 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 Lego!
They're pulling out, taking their money somewhere else. So big projects are being shut down for games longer than ever. The Game Awards have multiple categories that are dominated by the same handful of games every year. Everyone is still playing Dota and Apex Legends. Fortnite is now expanding into its own
So,
platform
what'll it
with
be?
multiple different games
Wanna sign
inside it,
Don't
which
need
is
no
equal
signing.
to
Look.
Dota and Apex Legends, Fortnite.
Good day, grey one.
Everyone is still
So, who you
playing
gonna race?
Dota and
Stuttering
Apex
mama
Legends.
Max.
Fortnite is now expanding into its own platform with multiple different games
I'll take
inside
stuttering
it,
man.
which is equal parts fascinating
You,
and
you,
terrifying.
you
There just isn't that much room for multiplayer
Use
grinding,
your
and
battle
all these
brain.
other companies
Use
are
your
so
battle
desperate to get in
brain.
on the action that
Come
they are
on, let's set
diluting
the
the
wager
market
and
with
get
this
racing.
similar Slurpee, and fewer games are actually getting enough traction to make any real money. And because return on investment is so low, now investors are starting to get smart. They're pulling out, taking their money somewhere else. So big projects are being shut down prematurely. Entire studios are being shuttered. 2023 saw a massive, unprecedented round of layoffs across the entire industry. Some of these layoffs are simply the result of greedy executives and poor planning. It's actually common practice at this point to have a really good year, then lay off staff anyway to save money and make it an even better year. But much of this is because too many companies started spending too much money building up too many studios to make too many AAA games, and they're starting to realize it ain't paying off. Too many cooks in the kitchen, cooking up so many tacos that now everyone is full of tacos, and the mountains and mountains of unsold tacos are stinking up the place.
I declare things.
Nice, nice. You seem to know Orchard as well as you do Monsters. Here you go. And if the urge to race again grabs you, come see me.
Tech teams run on Notion. It's a collection of building blocks. Everything from text and images, to tables and databases. You can even integrate Slack, Jira, GitHub, and more. Get your team started for free.
It's hard not to see this as the bubble finally starting to burst, especially when you consider that games take so long to make. It takes a while before you see the results of any decision or shift in circumstance. If a genre or concept takes off and everyone scrambles to capitalize on it, by the time their games actually come out, it might be too late. And if the industry has been producing too many games for the market to actually handle, it took a while to actually get to this point where it is painfully obvious even to them. That's why the bubble is bursting slowly. The first step is mass layoffs. But despite the layoffs, despite the fact that they might be growing wise to the idea that they have been flooding the market with garbage, what did we see at the Game Awards? A constant barrage of focus-tested, live service products that have taken tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars and several years to produce. All hitting the scene now, all at the same time, all desperate to make back whatever money they can. A trend-chasing live service game is bad enough, but one that no one even has any faith in, that's just sad. Just look at that Suicide Squad game. A generic, always online looter shooter. They revealed it, and nobody cared. It's made by a very highly regarded studio as well, but it seems that their talents were completely wasted in the pursuit of that live service gravy train. And people were wise to the grift. We're all learning what games like this are trying to do. Reception to the reveal wasn't just tepid. It was overwhelmingly negative. So they delayed the game and did their best to address some concerns. Like with many
or was till he died at war. He stands by me headboard and wails. So many years apart, I've such woe in the beyond. Come join me. I say, I'll come, Jackamar, but when the gods summon me, not before. Then he says, leave your wedding ring by me grave. It'll make the waiting lighter. And I'd leave it, where the wood's not so terrifying. So I thought to myself,
Can we let go? Let go.
he's saying I can't tell me own man. I'm old, but I ain't gone daft yet.
Not what I meant. There's wraiths that deceive, assume the form of dead loved ones. Trows, for instance, or Dunnies.
Nay, I'm sure this is Jackamore. In me dreams he spoke of our nuptials, how we danced at Bellatane, how the Redanians killed him at Rind.
Rind? You've either mixed something up or you're very old indeed. Battle happened 80 years ago.
Oh, aye. Slip of the tongue. Meant to say the Battle of Rivia.
Be glad to help. Where's Jackamore buried?
A little cemetery near Blackbow, in a grave neath the old tree. Here, take me ring. Once you've laid it down, come to me for your reward. I live in a hut in the middle of the village with my granddaughter, Leslie.
Where the hell? Strange.
Oh, she's always doing that.
Eyes to the grift. We're all learning what games like this are trying to do. Reception to the reveal wasn't just tepid, it was overwhelmingly negative. So they delayed the game and did their best to address some concerns. Like with many projects, they were forced to course correct a bit. Now they've been showing it off again, and maybe they've touched up some issues, but we still know what the game wants to be, and we still don't care about it one bit. Someone somewhere cares, I'm sure, but the prevailing opinion is... this game. I can't even fathom how much this game costs to make. I will never see that much money in my life. And they're releasing it knowing that it's probably going to flop horribly. Maybe it'll surprise us somehow, but this AAA game is hitting a market that already doesn't care about it. It is a pre-failure. Redfall, same thing. Arcane Studios, super famous, tons of incredible games under their belts. Forced to make some generic multiplayer junk. It releases in a force gate and is deemed an instant flop. Another humongous, obscenely expensive game, dead on arrival. Ubisoft, a few years ago, they pledged themselves to the live service god. Say, that's the only kind of game they ever want to make ever again. Fast forward to today, their business is struggling hard. They keep making these games, and the games keep not working. When Assassin's Creed 4 proved to be so popular with its naval combat, instead of giving everyone what they were asking for, which was a full pirate game, they decided to make a live service multiplayer pirate game. It's been in development for who even knows how long by now. Everyone who's played it says it isn't any fun. No one is excited for it. They keep delaying and retooling it, but they can't seem to make it work. All the while, they are flushing unfathomable riches down the toilet to keep the project going, and they know painfully well that they are about to release it onto an entirely unenthusiastic market that wrote it off completely years ago.
Tell me what you got.
Hi.
Well, keep looking. What are you doing?
Hate to say I told you so, AAA game industry, but I told you so! And it's not because I am so wise and knowledgeable. I'm the only one who really knows what's going on. No, we all told you so. We all knew this was going to happen, but you did it anyway, and now you and your poor employees are paying for it. This is why when people say, oh, you think you know how to run a multi-billion-dollar company better than they do? I say, yes, I do. There's so blinded by the money, so disconnected from the actual desires and spending habits of their market that many of us could easily run a company better than they could. We literally saw this coming from a mile away, and they had no idea. Literally, billions of dollars flushed down the toilet, spent on failed projects. Even if I couldn't do better, I sure as heck wouldn't do much worse. The AAA industry is turning into a weird ghost town.
To a ghost. Why wasn't she buried alongside her husband?
I can't say for certain. I was a little lass then. But me mum told me that shortly before Gran died, she learned Grandad had kept lovers on the side. She had no desire to lie beside him.
Seems she changed her mind. She wanted something to connect her and her husband in the afterlife. Asked me for help.
That's hard to believe. But you've an honest look about you. If you helped Gran, you deserve a reward. Here, tain't much, but I'm afraid it'll have to do. It's past, then the pox, now the hunger. Grim Reaper must be having a lark.
Full of extremely expensive mansions that no one wants to buy. Lavish constructions that were built by 1,000 people each. No expense spared. Marvels of engineering. And when no one wanted them, they were left to rot. So then, if it is true that we are seeing an unprecedented flood of similar slew and the beginnings of a burst bubble, what does that actually mean for us? What does a burst AAA bubble look like? Well, honestly, it's probably not going to be quite as dramatic as an actual bubble bursting. The gaming market is not going to crash like it did in the 80s, tanking so severely that most people thought video games were just over entirely, just done. Video games, they're done. It's a laughable thought now, but that's just how bad that crash was. Right now, people can literally make games in their own homes, so indies will always be around, and plenty of AAA companies are doing just fine. Nintendo, for instance, is doing their own thing, playing in their own field, and it's working quite well for them. Good games will always exist, and despite everything, we're still getting more amazing titles than we can handle. The industry is not going anywhere. Realistically, the bubble bursting means fewer investors in the AAA gaming sphere. Unfortunately, that means more layoffs, more closed studios, which is awful. And I wish AAA was the only sector to be affected, but plenty of big companies are also funding indie studios, and those are also getting hit.
Show me where
On the flip side, though, this all would mean fewer huge companies all competing with each other. Next. Fewer sci-fi looter shooters and hero shooters and MOBAs and all that clogging. And fewer sci-fi looter shooters and hero shooters and MOBAs and all that clogging up the Game Awards. Bandit companies have been less and less willing to be creative and take risks because of their desperation for profit. Then less aggressive competition could theoretically mean that there is more room for games that are actually novel and fueled by genuinely good ideas instead of focus groups and checklists and profit projections. The entire market won't crash, but even a stabilization would be a very good thing. To swing back to the negative, though, if people stop trying to grab a piece of the pie, that means the ones that are already eating the pie get to have it all to themselves. I don't play a lot of multiplayer stuff, so I get to have it all. Have a piece of the pie. That means the ones that are already eating the pie get to have it all to themselves. I don't play a lot of multiplayer stuff, so I can't fathom the idea of spending thousands and thousands of hours on one single game. No game is that fun, but a whole lot of other people seem to disagree, and I hate the idea that in the future, even in the far future, all the same games will be popular. What does the future of games look like when the same handful of titles continue to dominate? Not to get too deep, but I kind of fear for kids who grow up playing Fortnite. Not because Fortnite bad, but because if that's all any of your friends play, that's probably all you're going to play. And how are you going to develop an actual taste for games when all you are is a little machine that's been trained to dump all your money into skins and junk? Okay, reel it in. The point is, we've all known the industry has big problems for a while now, but I think things are finally reaching after watching that show, the bubble might finally be bursting. And
this up if I want to get rid of the
This is what
evidence.
happens. It has been a long time since I've done a classic critical Arlo opinion piece. Well, when was the last time I did this? Honestly, they take a lot out of me, so I'm not super into them anymore. I'd rather just talk about cool games or whatever. But this has been fun. This is fun. I like this. This has been nice. Oh, and before I go, I streamed the Game Awards. It was super fun. You can find the VOD on Arlo Plays if you want to see me reacting to World of Goo 2 and Flute Guy playing progressively bigger instruments, which is just the funniest stinking thing I had seen in ages. And I've been streaming on YouTube recently, so look out for future streams.
The story and narrative of Horizon Forbidden West is a flawed masterpiece. Even over a year after its release, in February 2022, it still generates much debate amongst fans, experts, and plays the series at launch, and ultimately the inevitable third game comes out probably in 5 years' time. Of course, there's been much fans, experts, and plays the series at launch, and how it will be viewed once the almost inevitable third game comes out probably in 5 years' time. Of course, there's been much conversation surrounding many other facets of the game, be it gameplay, mechanics, or overall presentation of the game, all three of which were praised or at least one of the same time that critics were released. The third one received the most points out of all of them. The first game had been vastly improved upon in one way or another. Conversely, the discourse surrounding the main narrative has been rather mixed. There's no denying the game's vastly improved writing, particularly in side quests and overall dialogue, but the main story has been the source of much disagreement. I think it's safe to say that the majority of players enjoyed Forbidden West's story, but to call it a resounding majority would be an exaggeration. If you've watched my previous videos on the series, you'll know that I've made it no secret that I absolutely adore Forbidden West, considering it my game of the year for 2022, even with another certain and equally brilliant game also releasing that same year. As arbitrary as it is, if I had to make a top 5 list of my favorite games, Forbidden West would sit firmly in second place, behind only the GOAT that is The Witcher 3. Truth be told, if you include the 2 runs I did for this video, one brand new and one New Game Plus, I've played through Forbidden West a grand total of 9 times since its release, a replay number that's only exceeded by my 10 plus playthroughs of The Witcher 3. And before you ask, no, I have no shame. Forbidden West a grand total of 9 times since its release, a replay number that's only exceeded by my 10 plus playthroughs of The Witcher 3. And before you ask, no, I have no shame. Not since The Witcher 3 have I ever been so consumed by a game, and the narrative is a huge reason why, along with the world that it's set in, and the characters that inhabit it, in the way I was being first among them. That said, if you came up to me and said that Zero Dawn's story was better, I most certainly wouldn't argue. Zero Dawn's story, front to back, is a masterpiece in its own right, despite having its own issues, becoming one of the most beloved video game narratives of the last decade. This left the writers at Guerrilla with the difficult task of creating a new story that would successfully follow up Zero Dawn and excel. By and large, they succeeded, aided by the game's improved presentation, which gives the game a cinematic quality that goes even beyond the story and the side quests and such treatment. Having the game itself, particularly in narrative dialogue, brought to life by stellar performances from nearly every single voice actor and actress, though Ashley Perch and Lance Reddick remain the undisputed stars of the show. However, I have to harken back to what I said at the beginning of the video, that Forbidden West's story and narrative is a flawed masterpiece. As paradoxical as that sounds, it is arguably the best way to describe it. Despite how great it is, there is no denying that there are problems buried within the scenes, some more noticeable than others, but that Zero Dawn does certain things better with its narrative. These flaws in no way fatally harm the story narrative, and if you have a high tolerance for such things, you might not even notice them, but they are worth mentioning since they could easily rear their ugly heads if not addressed in the almost certain third game. As you might have already guessed, this video will be entirely focused on Forbidden West's narrative, with bits about gameplay being only added in when applicable, appropriate, or otherwise unavoidable as it pertains to the story. I will leave timestamps in the description box below so that you can easily navigate from one section to the next, should you choose to watch this video in parts instead of a single sitting. A few housekeeping items to go over before we dive in. As mentioned earlier, for this video I played through the game twice, first on a brand new run, then again on a New Game Plus, making different decisions and picking different flashpoint options on each run. Also, whereas I played the fresh run as I usually do, including the previous 7 times, doing side quests as I traverse the world, on the New Game Plus front I mainlined the entire main story first, then did all the side quests, to see how their stories and dialogue changed in reaction to the present world state. I say all that because you may see an interchange. I mainlined the entire main story.
Run, Roach.
Also, whereas I played the fresh run as I usually do, including the previous 7 times, doing side quests as I traverse the world, on the New Game Plus front I mainlined the entire main story first, then did all the side quests, to see how their stories and dialogue changed in reaction to the present world state. I say all that because you may see an interchange of armor, weapons, and face paint in similar scenes that might not make sense without this prior knowledge and could lead to utter confusion. Also, as an aside, I strongly recommend watching my Zero Dawn and Frozen Wilds videos before watching this one, or better yet, play them both beforehand. Like a VOD back in Meridian for Aloy, this video will be waiting for you. Also, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't state that there will be spoilers for all of Forbidden West, some of its side quests, as well as Zero Dawn and the Frozen Wilds DLC. Now, without further ado, let's hop on our chargers and follow Aloy as she rides into the Forbidden West.
Look at us. 3 battle-hardened badasses forging into the unknown. Is that good?
Rot-fiend nest needs to be destroyed.
No choice.
Machine, but progressively getting bigger and bigger and more numerous reminder that this is a series set in for roughly 30 seconds it takes for this montage to play, get the sense that everything is alright, that nothing immediately apparent is wrong, even if you thought that David Attenborough would chime in at any moment. However, that sense is swiftly dashed when we get our first glimpse of light, followed by Aloy riding through it and unstoppable. 6 months have passed since the end of Zero Dawn, and the deterioration of the Earth's biosphere has gotten significantly worse, as seen by the rampant of light, both on land and in the water, compounded by the raging supercell storms. If you remember, this is a result of the destruction of Gaia, a super advanced AI at the heart of the terraforming system that brought back life following the end of the Pharaoh planet. Gaia had to destroy herself after a mysterious signal turned all of her sub-functions into chaotic, self-aware AIs, who eventually got loose just before she could destroy them with her. Now, without a governing authority, the terraforming system is spiraling out of control. This started almost immediately after Gaia's death and Aloy's birth some 20 years earlier, with the derangement of the machines. The appearance of the blight and supercell storms in the Carja Sundom is a sign that the biosphere is fast approaching the point of no return. When we first meet Aloy, she spent the last 6 months searching for a backup of Gaia, but so far every lead has led to nothing, all while she races against the biological clock. Though there should be, in theory, multiple copies, all seem to have been purged along with the Apollo database, the vast repository of human knowledge, unsuch as Chief Ted Pharaoh in the 2060s. 1,000 years later, and that purge is coming back to haunt the world, and Aloy is bound for a final end. Aloy takes shelter from a storm under a crumbling tower, falling asleep by the fire. We then enter a dream sequence, one that, according to her, she's had repeatedly for the last few months. Under a starry night sky and a field of flowers sits a tree, illuminated by sunlight off in the distance. Approaching the tree, Aloy finds Elizabeth Sobat, holding the same pendant that
Wounded and tired, Siri collapsed in the swamp. Some peasants found her and took her to the town. Alan was the warlord took the young woman in, had her nursed back to health, and sent her on her way to...
Unfortunately, it doesn't last long. The blight soon appears. Elizabeth disintegrates into nothing, the blight stealing her away from Aloy, followed by a blight mind taking a hold of her, rendering her immobile. It's then that she awakens.
I'm always left alone.
This dream sequence is important for setting up one of the narrative's biggest fears, that of relationships. You'll notice by now that Aloy is alone. On the surface, this doesn't appear unusual or out of place. She was born and raised an outcast, shunned by the Nora, a tribe she insinuates at multiple points throughout the game she isn't truly a part of anymore. As such, she's used to being on her own, though not of her own choosing. However, throughout her journey in Zero Dawn, she meets a number of people along the way, a good few of whom become close friends. Varl, Aaron, Talana, Vanasha, you get the idea. She has friends now, friends who would go to the ends of the earth for her to help her in her mission. And yet, as we'll learn a little later, after defeating Hades, she led Meridian and set off on her search without telling anyone. She's choosing to be alone instead of being forced. This is a notable shift in her character, but not entirely out of left field. If you remember from Zero Dawn, Aloy is a genetic clone of Elizabeth Sobek, lead alpha of Project Zero Dawn and Gaia's creator. As such, she's literally the only person in the world who can interface with Zero Dawn's systems, as well as reboot and repair Gaia, and thus repair the terraforming system and save the Earth. At the risk of putting it mildly, that's a ludicrous amount of pressure to have on one person's shoulders. And yet Aloy, due to her unique genetics, sees it as her sole responsibility to follow and live up to Elizabeth's example, to pull the world back from the brink. Driven by this, Aloy has spent the last 6 months actively pushing people away, and will continue to do so throughout the opening quarter of the story. This can be attributed to her having, at least in her eyes, a stronger connection to Elizabeth, as evidenced by her dream, as she feels that only Elizabeth could truly understand what it is that she has to do, and the risk she has to take in doing so. I have to admit, it's kind of strange given that Elizabeth's, 1,000 years dead, but to be fair, this is an effect that's flown over Aloy's head. Her intonation when she brings it up seems to suggest that she too finds it odd. What it's done is created an inner conflict within Aloy, a tug of war of sorts, one that, at this juncture, I don't think she's fully aware of yet, so driven by her mission. It'll form the basis of her arc, providing the sharp focus at key points throughout the story, supplemented by more subtle moments both in the main narrative and in side quests. Approaching the edge of the cliff, where we get a brief glimpse of the battle beyond, we're swiftly greeted by an old friend. Varl and his green pants are back, having spent the last 6 months tracking Aloy, who has, up until now, remained one step ahead. He's also sported a fantastic beard, but don't get used to it doesn't hang around very long. It's in the subsequent conversation that we learn about Aloy's sudden disappearance, as well as the first inklings of that inner conflict I just spoke about. Pay close attention to how each of them speak. Aloy is saying I, compared to Varl's we. Varl plays a huge role in the story, one we'll get into later, and his very early appearance establishes that. We also get some insight into Aloy's discomfort at now being famous. Never mind being named and anointed by Lenora, she now bears the Heart of Honor ribbons as savior and champion, following her exploits for Riggin at the first game. Never not humble, most of the time. She's quick to make it clear that she isn't a fan of such titles. In fact, a good few conversations in the game will open with Aloy being rather clear that she's just Aloy.
It's just Aloy. It's Aloy. You now are using confidence.
Varl is quick to attach himself to Aloy's search, acting as if it's part of the time. Conversely, Aloy is quick to attach Varl is taking over her answer, reasoning that he's the one going to help her after saving Lenora in the last game. Seeing that he isn't about to give up, Aloy turns to him and leaves him.
To be able to see this.
Together they jump down into the valley, kickstarting the tutorial section. Like Zero Dawn, this segment took place as a teaching phase, as well as providing ample storytelling and world building. Throughout, Aloy will teach Varl about aspects regarding focus and then teaching some of their travels, while Varl will get Aloy up to speed on everything that's happened since her side departure. We'll also reintroduce to combat, as well as a few new machines. This entire segment has been a source of criticism, often used to highlight the story's pacing issues, due to the error of tempo. While I wouldn't use this section to highlight the problem and enjoy it for what it does in terms of storytelling and world building, I'll admit that it takes its time more than it probably should, especially for players who already have an inkling of what they're doing. There's a possible reason for this. As you can probably tell, Forbidden West is a huge step up from Zero Dawn graphically, but it must be said that Zero Dawn still looks utterly gorgeous many years later. That said, there are going to be players who will skip Zero Dawn so they can, in theory, play the premier game of Forbidden West on PS5. Gorilla must have anticipated this, and it's made this tutorial section as long as it is so everybody can be on the same page, even if it means the pacing takes. That said, there are going to be players who will skip Zero Dawn so they can, in theory, play the premier game of Forbidden West on PS5. Gorilla must have anticipated this, and hence made this tutorial section as long as it is so everybody can be on the same page, even if it means the pacing takes a little bit. Heading down into the ruins, they discover they might not be alone. Entering the ruins, we learned that it wasn't a Zero Dawn facility, but a Far Zenith launch facility. An organization that preceded Zero Dawn, Far Zenith was also working towards saving humanity from Pharaoh, by literally leaving the Earth behind. We learn a bit about them from various data points in the first game, including that they, as Aloy points out, can detect traits with Zero Dawn, including the ectogenic chambers used in cradle facilities, the nature of these traits being expanded upon throughout our current search. Aloy's perplexed that there could be a guy backup in a Parzian facility. As far as we know, Parzian got a copy of all the databases to exchange with ectogenic chambers, but at no point was a copy of the guy ever mentioned or even considered. Pushing on, we come upon the camp, and the bodies of its occupants. Oscar Delvers had arrived just before them, but were killed by something massive. The camp soaked with acid, putting Aloy and Varl slightly on the job. In this camp, there was a vacuum system, as well as a forecast, where possible, as well as clearing out any debris. After a short platforming section, we enter an auditorium, where we're greeted by a holographic message by Parzian, a curated sales pitch to join the Odyssey, an abandoned spaceship and space colonization project that's directed by Parzian, with the goal of reaching a planet in the Sirius system 8.6 light years away. Varl, of course, can't continue to shock with the wolf until Aloy is quick to explain that the Odyssey never actually made, and it was destroyed somehow in transit, which is something you might already know about from Zero Dawn. Varl's reaction gives him a knowledge is absolutely perfect, and I will never not laugh every time I see it. Stepping into the next room, Aloy wonders if Elizabeth gave Parzian a copy of Gaia to help support their colony. It's in that next room that we see another sales pitch, albeit a far different one in terms of tone and meaning. Whereas the first one is heavily altruistic, this small one reveals that the Odyssey was intended only for the world's elite. The Odyssey being more means to escape, it's actually advanced the human race. This isn't exactly surprising. When the Horizon series is all about the newest degree of the development, conflict, and the Horizon Aloy surprisingly isn't shocked by this. Varl feels the need to see the plainly obvious that the initial pitch was all a lie. It's a sharp dip in the writing with compared to the rest of the game. His dialogue here sounding incredibly forward and, dare I say, kind of cringy. It is only saved from being worse by Aloy's total lack of response. From this room, we get a new head, a data center deeper in the launch facility grounds. Along the way, we catch a glimpse of what might have been the Oscar we found earlier. Pushing ahead, we dive deeper into the ruins, and after some platforming and machine combat, we eventually come across what appears to be a strong medium for the skill of the console. Searching its contents, Aloy finds something called Arms, and begins another fabrication. In it, we learn that the Gaia backup they got wasn't gifted to Parzian, but actually stolen, being cast from Zero Dawn HQ by an imprinted asset to their data center, the Zero Dawn staff being none the wiser, thus explaining how it is that they don't have one. It's a clever little twist, given that, as far as we know, both Zero Dawn and Parzian are seemingly on equal terms. Another clever detail can be found in the sleeper's name. In ancient Mesopotamian myth, more specifically Sumerian and Akkadian, Manaslu is a demon that stole the Tablet of Destinies, a document that granted the god Enlil's supreme authority over the universe. Given Gaia's position at the center of the highly advanced world-spanning terraforming system, this name choice is perfect.
Wouldn't mind a look at your stuff.
It's also here that Aloy reveals the truth of her origins to Varl, after he asks why a certain someone shares a striking resemblance to her. This then leads to Aloy explaining who Gaia was, what happened to her, and why she made Aloy. Varl struggles to wrap his head around this revelation. Then again, when Aloy explains that the goddess of Norse myth, the Old Mother, is actually Gaia, not a supernatural entity. Aloy kills the conversation before it evolves into something more, telling him that they need to push onto the data center. To Varl's credit, he doesn't push the issue further, perhaps recognizing her discomfort with discussing the topic. After we continue through more ruins, with some platforming sections, short classes with machines, and another glimpse of the big slithery beastie that's haunting our progress, we find ourselves on top of a tower, overlooking the data center and the path to it. Just one problem. There's not just one slithery beast, but three. Say hello to the Slitherfang, a brand new machine in Forbidden West, one that I have a love-hate relationship with. All three stand in the way to the data center with no way to go around. After some deliberation, Aloy spots an overhead shelf held in place by massive clamps and suggests dropping it on them. Before Varl can say anything, Aloy leaves him behind, telling him to wait while she storms on the head.
Aloy, good job, Macho.
Press me.
Good job, Macho.
And there she goes.
The next 10 minutes or so, depending on how quickly you complete it, is just an amalgamation of everything we've learned thus far, chiefly about stealth, combat, and climbing. Upon reaching the tower and eliminating the machines, Aloy hits a switch that releases the clamps. Unfortunately, some of the cables refuse to snap, and the shuttle remains hanging on, and Aloy has to climb up and shoot them. succeeds, and the shadow lands right on top of the Slitherfangs, killing them. Unfortunately, the shadow decides to take the tower with it, forcing Aloy to perform some next-level acrobatics to ensure a safe landing, though it's far from a soft one.
Come on now.
Before she can catch her breath, however, one of the Slitherfangs is still with some fight left in it. So begins the first boss battle of the game. As such, it's a fairly bog-standard encounter, the Slitherfang still trapped in the rubble, thus limiting its moveset variety. There is a second phase of sorts, the Slitherfang breaking free when it's down to about a quarter health, thus gaining the ability to use its tail weapons, but nothing more beyond that. Once the Slitherfang is finally down, the path to the data center is finally clear. Entering the building, you can almost feel the tension rising as we descend deeper into its bowels, punctuated by the trepidation in Aloy's voice. It's an interesting choice given that we're still so early in the story, but I think it works given what we know. Remember, this is Aloy's final lead, with 6 months of toil at stake. To have all that work comes to nothing. Well, let's see how that plays out.
It's here.
To steal a copy of Gaia and her subordinate functions. Naughty, naughty.
Well, shit. To be honest, as much as I'm frustrated for Aloy, I can't help but chuckle at Tate's deception, especially with his lovely salute, as well as his clever use of a certain funny number. Nice. It's here that Varl finally catches up, and through no fault of his own, draws the ire of Aloy's frustration. I have to give Varl credit here, because he handles it pretty well. That said, after they leave the valley and ascend up a cliff face, you can tell that refusing Aloy's heart was very intentional, and Aloy knows it.
I'm sorry. You have a sharp mind sometimes, you know.
Aloy again attempts to lead Varl. Fresh out of Leech but still needing to search, she doesn't want to put Varl, or anyone for that matter, at any unnecessary risk, using what just happened in the valley as an example, before reiterating that it's her responsibility alone. It's then that Varl gets an idea. Silence. He might know a thing or two. Just one problem. Aloy hasn't heard from him since the Battle of Meridian, despite, as we'll later, her many attempts to contact him. It's then that Varl suggested they go back to Meridian and speak to Marat, Sun King Abad's spy master, given his uncanny knack for finding people. Except for Aloy, apparently.